So, gents, we are about a week away from the trade deadline. And so obviously we are we wait on bated breath, as the overused expression goes, to see how Dana Brown and the Astros front office look to bolster. Specifically, I think all eyes are on starting pitching because that's where the greatest needs are at. Chandler Rome posited a few ideas within his column over the past few days. And just for emphasis, these are not rumors. These are just options that Chandler himself thought would be interesting in the event that Crane didn't want to go into that second tax threshold. Easy for me to say. So the options that he put out there were White Sox's Chris Flexen, who's carrying over a 5 ERA right now. Austin Gomber of the Rockies, who's carrying a 4.61 ERA. The A's, Paul Blackburn, who's been injured. He's doing some rehab starts right now. And another idea, which is more pie in the sky, was Michael Lorenzen, which he notes is a long shot given where the Rangers are at in the playoff race. Nothing super exciting in that, Charlie, but do any of those guys scratch the itch that the Astros have right now in starting rotation?
Not really. Those names. You mentioned Chris Flexen, ERA over 5 this year. Last season, his ERA was over 6. He had a couple of decent seasons with the Mariners in 21 and 22, but those are increasingly in the rearview mirror. Right? The questions that have to be addressed if you're trading for B or C list starting pitchers available. If Verlander's coming back and you're hoping for moderate results from him, the guy you trade for, is he going to be better than what you can ask for or expect or reasonably hope for from Arrighetti and Blas, which isn't a terribly high bar, but as bad as Arrighetti's been overall, his ERA is not worse than 6. So Flexen to me doesn't do it. Lorenzen and the Rangers would have to be quitting on their season because he's been very good for them and a durable starting pitcher. I would say the idea that, the Rangers would never want to put another bullet in the Astros chamber. Look, if the Rangers are selling because they're deciding, we're not in it. And that's where this week, while the Rangers have it very soft, they better win at least 5 of 7 games, or they may well pivot to saying it's not going to happen, right? Because they're 5 out in the division. They're 7.5 out for the third wild card right now. So if they don't gain ground on at least one front this week, they should not say, under no circumstances would we trade Lorenzen to the Astros, because he's a rental. And I understand if you're the Rangers, do you want to help the Astros get back to the ultimate winner circle? Well, you're not sending them a guy who could be what Yordan Alvarez was, a pillar, a tentpole player for the Astros for years to come. So if the Rangers are cashing out in 2024, but the Astros make the best offer for Lorenzen, then the Rangers should take that offer. But therein lies the rub. The Astros are going to have a tough time making the best offer for anyone good, which is why Garrett Crochet, forget it. Jack Flaherty, the Tigers probably should trade. I can't see the Astros making the best offer for him. Eric Fetty is the White Sox who interests me well above Flexen. He signed for $7.5 million next year. Very reasonable money. And he's flat out better than Arrighetti or what Blas is likely to be the rest of the way. And there are other names we can pitch in. 2 teams beyond the Rangers that I think are very interesting in this final run up to the deadline. Toronto, which is showing no signs. Chris Bassett's a good, solid, durable starter. $22 million next year, which drops the prospect price you'd have to pay for him. But would the Astros run the other way, even if Verlander's off the books, Bregman's off the books, taking on a guy who's not a number 1 starter, but is going to make $22 million next year? Yusei Kikuchi is a competent back end of the rotation lefty. He'd be a rental from the Toronto Blue Jays. And one other angle to this, and then Josh, you can have at it. If the Astros just swing and miss, not through any direct failing of Dana Brown, but too many teams have better prospects they can offer. And if these starting pitchers come off the board to where really Chris Flexen's the best we can do, maybe you can do better adding 2 relievers, right? You're solid now. You're riding with Hader, Presley, Abreu as your back 3. Taylor Scott has been absolutely phenomenal. So that's 4. They can't pitch every day. You don't want them pitching 3 out of every 4 days. Well, Montero, no. Seth Martinez, really, no. And then the fungible guys that they keep sending up and down to the minor leagues, your Brian Kings, and when Luis Contreras was here, and 3, 4 other guys, Sean Dubin. Well, if the Blue Jays are cashing out, you could do worse than Yimi Garcia, a second go round as a 5th or 6th guy in the Astros bullpen. And that second team would be the Rays. And given their payroll restrictions, they often do some interesting things. Jason Adam, Peter Fairbanks, a couple of bullpen arms who are not, real pieces of the puzzle going forward for the Rays, who'd be absolute upgrades over guys like Montero. Would the Astros get to where, okay, we'll Abreu Montero and swallow the $11.5 million he makes next year, but upgrades over Montero and Martinez so that your bullpen, you can even further shorten the starts for your back of the rotation guys. If you have 6, 7 guys in that bullpen, you're thinking we can split up the workload amongst them.
That would be a nice luxury to have another guy in there outside of your kind of top 4 relievers that Charlie laid out. That, hey, if you want to give Presley the night off or Abreu or whoever, to have somebody that you really trust to go in there, that would be fantastic. As far as those starters that you mentioned, Brandon, Lorenzen sticks out as the best option to me by far because, clearly his ERA is 3.5. It's funny, though. It does come down to, are you adding a player that's better than somebody you already have? Are you adding somebody that's better than Dubin or somebody that's better than Arrighetti? And it's interesting, before the season started, when we were looking at the Astros depth, Dana Brown made that comment like, I'm not sure there's anybody out there that's any better than someone we have in-house. And at that time, Lorenzen was out there, and he signed a pretty reasonable contract with the Rangers. And a lot of people like us were saying, like, this wouldn't make a lot of sense. It wouldn't cost you a ton of money. And we know how many injuries they had going into the season, but Dana Brown decided to hold tight, didn't do it. And so now you're hoping that maybe you can get him from the Rangers. It just doesn't look likely. I know they're far out in the wild card, but in the division, 5 games back, we laid it out. You're playing the White Sox for these next 4. I think within a week, they're probably still going to be thinking they have a chance. They won the World Series last year, so I'm not so sure they're going to be ready to throw in the white towel a week from now. So out of these guys that we might get, I guess Austin Gomber from Colorado, you don't feel good about it. You kind of hold your nose adding these guys. There's a reason they're available and they're, that inexpensive. But, I look at his last few starts, he's given up at least 4 runs in 4 out of his last 5 outings. And he, outside of Lorenzen, who I think is a pipe dream, he probably looks like your best option there. Blackburn, Brandon talked about it. He's been injured for a long time, and he just came back and did a rehab start in AAA and got lit up by Jake Marisnick, of all people, for a home run and a double. So I don't know if that help that you're looking for is going to be in one of these guys. So Dana Brown, you're going to earn your money. You're going to earn your pay this trade deadline.
Just to follow on Gomber, remember the Colorado factor with him. He was one of the key pieces who went in the Arenado trade with the Cardinals. So 4.91 ERA when you're pitching your home games a mile high. The Astros like his underlying numbers, spin rate. He's also young and cheap, just getting to arbitration eligibility. So if they like him, he's a guy who the price would not be prohibitive. But if there's the wow type trades, if the Tigers, which to me would be a joke, but if they trade Tarek Skubal, the Astros can't come close to making the best offer for a guy like that. I presume the same with Crochet with the White Sox. I mentioned Flaherty. I'm a little wary of softball tossers, left-handed, when pop flies can wind up in the Crawford boxes at Minute Maid Park. But Tyler Anderson's been a very good pitcher. 2 of the last 3 seasons, ERA is below 3, and he's toiling for that lousy Angels ball club. Right? If he's moved, and I can't find better, and the prospect price is a match, just one more name to include in the hopper on the pitching side of things.
Josh, in reference to Dana Brown's preseason comments, in his defense, it would have been impossible to project, I think, that Javier and Urquidy both go down with TJ. I do remember us talking about that, just I think specifically because Blake Snell was still out there and Jordan Montgomery was still out there, which those 2 guys in particular, hey, them not acting on that turned out to be the best thing. But yeah, it would have been nice to have picked up Lorenzen. Again, I just think it would have been impossible to project the situation they would have been in with Javier or Urquidy going down, and then JV probably not. Maybe that would have been more predictable, given his age, but I don't think we could have foreseen JV missing such a big chunk of the season as well. On the offensive side, Rome brings up Isaac Paredes as a possible target. With you've got that need at first. He's an infielder, and you've got the possible departure of Alex Bregman. At third after this season, and he is under team control. Charlie, any thoughts on Paredes and adding a bat? I know we've talked about that's not really what ails this team per se, but every little bit helps.
Well, yeah, if they just can't access pitching because of the prospect inferiority, nothing wrong with strengthening a strength. Just take a quick sip of reality here, though. Isaac Paredes is fabulous. Sign me up, a 25-year-old all-star third baseman. Well, he's a 25-year-old all-star third baseman. What in the hell the Astros have that's going to win a trade if the Rays put Isaac Paredes in play? He's almost 5 years younger than Bregman. He's better than Bregman. I mean, maybe you could trade him Bregman, send the money to pay Bregman and prospects to get Paredes, right? If the Rays are trying to thread that needle of, well, we're still kind of in the wild card race. We don't just want to sell. But Paredes is a young stud. I just can't see him as Astro accessible. But if so, he addresses third base post Bregman or is a first base option. But you have two to tango. What's the match there? I mean, I note the Astros' number 1 ranked prospect, outfielder Jacob Melton, having a hugely disappointing season at AA, batting in the 240s. Luis Baez, a 20-year-old outfielder, is very interesting, but he's also further away from the major leagues. So, I mean, the Astros is just going to get outbid on a lot of guys. Dana Brown gets move of the deadline if he gets Isaac Paredes, unless it's because Jim Crane said, we're not paying Kyle Tucker, so send him home to Tampa.
Yeah, I just, for all the things Charlie said, it doesn't seem like they have enough firepower to go do this. And I mean, 31 home runs last season. He's already got 16 this year. And Chandler brings up a good point in his article that, power right-handed hitter in Minute Maid Park. I mean, that checks the boxes right there. We were hoping Pena would be able to take advantage of the Crawford boxes this year, but he's only sitting at about 8 home runs. So it would be nice to have another right-handed hitter with some thump in the middle of the lineup, some flexibility at first and third base, but it doesn't feel like reality. It just doesn't. And that's just where we are. And that's okay. This is a good ball club. You've seen how well they've been playing without Tucker recently. So I just, you hate to dump cold water on it, but it feels like if they're going to make a big addition to this lineup, it's going to be Kyle Tucker coming back from injury.
I think the big hope on the biggest hitters who could move at the deadline, right? If the Rays actually entertain offers on Paredes, Toronto with Vlad Guerrero Jr. Again, what are the Astros going to put in play? The Seattle Mariners have the goods to put in play. They have 3-4 prospects higher rated than Jacob Melton or any other Astros prospect. The Mariners are so desperate for hitting, right? If the Astros stand pat and the Mariners stand pat, that's advantage Astros. But if the Astros don't have the prospect capital to make a meaningful upgrade, but geez, the Mariners get Vlad Guerrero Jr. and another bat, that brings some to the equation down the stretch.
I guess I just don't fear the Mariners getting a bat, considering the fact that it just seems like you can work around, a guy like you brought up from
Vlad.
You brought Vlad Guerrero's name up.
They should be after 2.
Yeah.
Just this weekend, and they scored 6 runs and salvaged the finale against the Astros. Their lineup is puke.
Yeah.
The team batting average lower than the White Sox going into the weekend. The White Sox are on pace to lose 114 games. The Mariners are tied for first place with an offense that is just straight garbage. So yes, one guy wouldn't fix it, but one guy in that lineup would be a start.
No, it would, but Vlad's not a guy who you fear like Yordan. You're not going to pitch around Vlad necessarily. I mean, he's a very, very good hitter, but even if he became Yordan-esque and you had to pitch around him, you can still pitch around him with that lineup. So I agree. It's going to take a couple bats, and to the comment about hoping Pena could take advantage of the Crawford boxes. Hell, at this point, I'd settle for anyone taking advantage of the Crawford boxes because they seem underutilized at this point of the season. Charlie, you've as we've talked about it through the season, you've talked about how if Dana Brown can't upgrade this roster at the deadline, it would be a disappointment. What kind of curve, as we close out here, I'll just finish on this. What kind of curve are we grading Dana Brown on, considering there is that stale farm system that he inherited when he joined Houston?
Yeah, it is a little bit of a catch-22. Dana Brown, make an impact trade. Dana Brown, make an impact trade when you don't have many good cards to play. And a whole bunch of other contenders. In the deep end of the pool, right? The Orioles, best record or second to Cleveland after they reeled in the Yankees in the American League the whole year. The Orioles farm system destroys the Astros farm system. So if the Orioles wanted to go play defense, they should be after a starting pitcher, Flaherty, any of these guys. If they just wanted to block the Astros from getting a guy, fearing the Astros more than any other team in a playoff scenario, the Orioles could just come in over the top and do it. The Dodgers are probably going to add pitching, right? The Astros covet Garrett Crochet. The Dodgers can laugh and say, here's our offer compared to what the Astros have to offer. So, it's not Dana Brown's fault that the Astros farm system depth overall right now stinks, right? He's just had his second draft, so we can't fairly judge the drafts. You can say, oh, look, the Astros got all these promising guys. Right, Bloss got to the major leagues just because of an emergency situation, not because he was Paul Skeens, 2.0. We'll see about Bryce Matthews over time. We'll see. Obviously, they just took Walker Yannick. But especially in the second tier market, they don't literally have to add a starting pitcher, but they absolutely should be adding a starting pitcher at minimum and or bullpen relief. But if you whiff on all the pitching, well, then you should be getting a fortification bat somewhere. It's not like, hey, my lawnmower's broken. Let's head down to, well, they're not sponsoring us. The stores and pick out our lawnmower, right? You have to give something up beyond cash to do it. But to say, well, our farm system was so weak, we could just do nothing. I don't think that would pass.
Dana Brown's in a tough spot because, marching orders, go fix the farm system. Okay. All right. Now go make a splash at the trade deadline using assets from the farm system I asked you to build up. So, hey, we got Drew Gilbert and Ryan Clifford. Well, you're going to send them away because we're going to bring in Verlander. So he's in a tough spot here to where he has two focuses that don't exactly align. They want to keep young talent in-house, but the only way to add a veteran good player is to give up young talent in-house. And it's a shame too. What if Chaz was playing out of his mind along with Jake Myers, and then you're like, we don't even have enough. What if Loperfido came up and kept hitting like he did originally? Then you might be in a spot where you're like, we have too many good outfielders. Maybe we can move one of those guys. But that just hasn't been the case. This is a team that is waiting for Kyle Tucker to come back because they need him. So Dana Brown, like I said earlier in the video, you're going to earn your money at this trade deadline.
But a floor of Dana Brown being able to come up with someone who's better than Montero or Seth Martinez or one of the rotating cast of characters who filled the final spot or two in the bullpen. That's a floor that you should be able to go past, because while the Astros, they have zero elite prospects right now in their minor league system, but there are always organizational guys. And if you're the Rays and you're selling off a 32-year-old reliever like Jason Adam, they might say, okay, there's not a robust market for him, but we'll take a flyer on 25-year-old, almost 26-year-old third baseman Shea Whitcomb or Will Wagner or 26-year-old Pedro Leon, who obviously the Astros truly don't think of much of as a prospect at this point, or he'd have gotten a taste somewhere along the way, given the outfield circumstances. So if Dana Brown, and if he doesn't make a move, it won't be because he twiddled his thumbs running up to the deadline. But if the net outcome is the same as if he twiddled his thumbs, that will be a fail by Dana Brown. But it would not be a disqualifying fail that says, oh, now they can't win the division.
All right, guys, that's all we got for this week of Stone Cold Stros. As always, you can check out the videos on YouTube. You can hear the podcast right now in its entirety, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast, you can find it there. We will see you next week, and go Stros.
Yeah, and I think you don't want to make a move for the sake of making a move. You want to add a net positive to the team without unloading something that you're going to regret down the line.
You just heliumed out with the last, just there. That's just the last thing that you said.
Well, I need to end it. Josh, why don't you outro us?